Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I am chilling with a good friend of mine, Sally Arnold, former tour manager of legends such as the Rolling Stones, Lynyrd Skynyrd and The Who. So welcome, Sally.
Thank you, Daisy.
Thanks for chilling out with me today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So just a heads up guys, we're keeping things really chill today. We're chilling in my lounge. No stress, it's all good. So Sally's just going to be sharing a fresh perspective and offering up some stories from your times with the bands. Yeah, and just to start off with, I think you wanted to share a little email that you got from one of our friends, Jeff, from our first interview.
Yeah, well, Jeff, I asked him what did he think I should talk about this time round, because it's very difficult to think of new things to say.
I know, right?
Yeah, because there's a lot in my book. Then we did the first interview. Anyway, this is what Jeff wrote. It's very erudite. I feel that people in general are most interested in hearing a new and fresh perspective, which you indeed have, on those beloved artists and icons who left this world way too soon, but nonetheless left their indelible respective marks on their age and audience for the ages, on their art and audience for the ages, First and foremost, the ever great, ever fascinating anomaly of Southern poet stroke street fighter Ronnie Van Zant and Lynyrd Skynyrd, of course, and the inimitable Keith Moon. So maybe discuss these people as such, despite the likely sensitive, emotional baggage you may undoubtedly carry to this day in their memory. And with Skynyrd in particular, there is an unfortunate dearth of information available, particularly from the unique, invaluable perspective of an insider, such as yourself. I, like many people who have read your book, never knew previously of your engagement to Dean, that's Dean Kilpatrick, who was the stage manager for Lynyrd Skynyrd, who remains for many an ardent Skynyrd fan a mystery man, a limited composite of a faded photo or two, a glimpse here and there in the band's home movies, coupled with a funny story or two, but nonetheless a compelling one of enduring interest with regard to how beloved he was by the band and yourself.
I don't think I could have put it any better myself.
No, I think he's put it really, really well. I really like that. And I think there was another quote he gave me that I want to read out. And this was to do with all the creative people in, I think, really the 70s, but he's mainly aiming at Skynyrd and Pete Townsend of The Who, where he says here, theirs is the art of human passion which can effortlessly move mountains and the hearts and souls of men in equal measure. Isn't that profound? Perfect. I think that's amazing. Good for you, Jeff.
Thank you so much for being such a wonderful support, Jeff. We love and appreciate you. So yeah, I think that's the perfect place to start. Yep. I mean, I'd love to hear some of your stories and experiences from your time with The Who. Okay.
Well, I happen to have with me a coat that was Keith Moon's coat. And he got it from Granny Takes a Trip. Okay, I don't know if you can see the logo there. Now, Granny Takes a Trip, where I bought loads of clothes in the 60s, was on King's Road. It was really just where King's Road went from being Chelsea to being World's End, it was called, that part, and then it went on down to Fulham. So Granny Takes a Trip was this amazingly funky shop for men and women, and this was one of Keith Moon's jackets.
It's surreal.
Which he gave to my brother, and I'll tell you some stories about that in a minute. It's very moth-eaten.
You said that he wore it to a photo shoot?
We can't find out.
Can't be sure.
Don't know. No, can't be sure at all.
It's
probably,
just fascinating.
Probably a photo shoot.
I think it's all the more exciting that we can't find any photos of him because it just leaves that kind of mystery.
Yeah, exactly. So, my brother, when I was working for The Who, was in the early 70s, and my brother used to come and stay with me, and of course because he was only 11, 12, 13, I'd bring him into the office and Keith would come in and take my brother out. And my brother says that he took him to the London Zoo, he took him to Madame Tussauds, he took him to the planetarium. I didn't know any of this. And a quote from my brother, Keith was a little kid at heart, always messing around and loved being with youngsters. So I mean, I just think it was amazing that he took time to look after my kid brother. I think that's fantastic. He was a sweetheart, but also a nutcase. He was never malicious, however outrageous, but he really couldn't control his drinking, despite being on Heminevrin, the prescription drug to help alcoholics. He seemed to be stuck in his teens. He was very childish and very sentimental, but he was such a sweet man. He really was. And but it wasn't really a big surprise when he died, because Annette, his girlfriend, who was living with him at the time, very dear friend of mine, saved his life many times, really by shoving her fingers down his throat and making him vomit, because he would take the Heminevrin, handfuls of it, he'd tip out the tablets and swig them back with whatever alcohol was at hand, either cognac or whiskey or something. So it wasn't surprising that he, that's how he died, by dying, there's a word, isn't there? I can't remember it, when you swallow, you asphyxiate on your own vomit, yes. Anyway, back to his life. I mean, he was always teasing all of us, and me especially. At one time in an airport, I think it was Glasgow or somewhere, he came up to me with blood pouring out of his mouth. And I went, "Oh my God, Keith, what have you done?" And I ran to the phone. I mean, you had to go to a telephone attached to a wall in those days, the public phone. And I started phoning 999. And he said, don't be silly. It's just fake blood. It was from a joke shop. It was fake blood capsules. There was that. And then the other thing, this wasn't messing around. We were stuck in fog. We were airport bound. We couldn't take off because of fog. We were in the airport. And it was just when computers had come into being. And he was so angry in the airport that he kicked the computer and the whole system went down. And of course he was put in prison. And this was in Scotland. And he was imprisoned. And of course it was my job, whatever I had to do to get them to the next gig, that was the job. I had to make sure they got to the next concert. And so I had to get the lawyer in London, Paddy Grafton Green, to speak to the Procurator Fiscal in Scotland, who's like the big law chief, to get Keith out of prison. I mean, we did it, but this was phone calls in the middle of the night and took hours and hours and hours. And there was a quick court case, but it all went fine and they let Keith go. I mean, I think they realised, again, it wasn't malicious. He was just being silly, as most of them were. So that was Mooney. I mean, he was also... I remember one time I was in Shepperton Studios with him, and he had a little portable record player, and he was playing me this record, saying, "This is me with Peter Cook, the comedian, and Dudley Moore." I don't know if I can say this out loud. I don't know. It was a song about Jane Mansfield. Okay. With lobsters up her bum. It was completely bonkers. This whole album was Derek and Clive, which was actually Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. Keith wasn't on it at all, but he told me he was, and I believed him. But this record, if ever any of you are looking for something really weird, get Derek and Clive. It's so funny.
Oh my God.
I don't know if you can get it any longer.
I think your brother worded it perfectly. He was just a big kid at heart.
Yes, he was a big kid at heart, definitely.
Bless him.
Definitely. Until he got drunk, and then he was just a blithering idiot, really.
As are most of us when we're
yeah,
drunk.
But he was sweet. He was never nasty. He was never mean, like some people can be.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, so that's sort of a bit about the others of The Who. Really, I've written mostly about them in my book, Rock and Roll Nanny, which is for sale in all good bookshops and on Amazon and on my website, rockandrollnanny.co.uk. And I do write about the personalities of all The Who. I mean, Pete Townsend is an amazing man. He is so clever. He is so perceptive. He is so kind. He was so kind to me during my cancer years. And I loved working for him when I was running the Double O charity, the Who's charity. We worked so well together. We raised thousands for the charity. And but he could be tricky. In the office, we didn't know if he's going to come in a good mood or a bad mood. So that was slightly tricky. But, you know, he's creative. He's an artist.
Yes, I will mention that I will leave all of Sally's information in the description below. I do highly recommend that you give her book a read. It's just so fascinating. Just history that you had no idea. Well, it's not even out there. And you're just offering this fresh perspective on...
I'm sure other people have written about it, but I've never read it. Roger Daltrey, still around, lovely sweetheart, gorgeous sweet man. I'll tell you one thing about Roger, he's very short. And you don't get that. When you see shots of him sort of looking up at him, he looks very tall. But he's actually only my height. He's about 5'4", 5'5", I think. But he's always been very fit and healthy. Never took drugs. Always looked after himself. But as he says in his own book, he did like the women. But Heather, his wonderful, lovely wife, understood. And I think they just had a really good agreement. And yeah, Roger's just a really sweet guy. I haven't seen him for a long time. Pete I stayed in touch with a lot longer because whenever I'm doing charity events, I always, poor old Pete, I always ask Pete for money for charities that I support. Because John Entwistle, who's dead, they were all really nice guys, actually. John was just a nice guy. There's really nothing more I can say. Here and Mooney I've talked about. Yeah. But I tell you, the crew were lovely. I loved those boys. And when I had to leave The Who, which is all written about in my book, I didn't want to leave. But my boss's wife thought I was having an affair with him, and of course I wasn't.
Yeah.
But
times were changing.
Yeah. And she then came into the office supposedly to be my assistant. Well, it doesn't really work with your boss's wife being your assistant.
Yeah.
So I then moved on, and actually, bizarrely, I moved on to the Stones. And at around this time also, Lynyrd Skynyrd came into my life.
Yes, I'd love to hear your perspective and stories on that incredible band.
My boys, God, I've never been a fan of rock and roll. I was always keen on classical music. I mean, I loved Elvis Presley in the 50s and 60s. But when I heard pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, the very first album, in the very early 70s, I just loved their music. I just fell in love with it. It spoke to me. And one day in the office, when I was looking after The Who, my boss said, we've been asked to put a band on tour with The Who with a really weird name. And he showed me the telex, and it was Lynyrd Skynyrd. I said, I'll look after them. I think they're amazing. So from that moment on, and that was probably 1973, late 73, early 74, they came over for their first tour in early 74 of Europe. And they were actually supporting not The Who, but Golden Earring, who are also lovely guys. Radar Love. You're too young to remember that.
Yes, I don't remember, sorry.
And but Skynyrd blew them off the stage.
Wow.
And suddenly Skynyrd was so popular all around the world that they ended up headlining. So I love those boys. Now, I've got something here.
This is just so
Ronnie
exciting.
Van Zant's, one of his original cowboy hats with the rattlesnake tail attached. In fact, again, given to my brother by Ronnie Van Zant. It's terribly old. It's got holes in it. And this had fallen off, so we sewed it back on.
What year do you think roughly he was given it?
Oh, it must have been 75, 76, something like that. And Ronnie had them specially made. I don't know if they were specially made, but it's Texas Hatters in Jacksonville, Florida.
It really suits you, by the way.
And it's a fabulous hat. Yeah, I've written here 75 or 76. Now, the thing is with Ronnie, he was my hero, my mentor, my best friend. We became so close. And he was such a genius with words. I mean, he was a real brilliant wordsmith. And I'm sure all you Skynyrd fans out there, you know, but people who don't know, listen to the songs and they've all got a story. Each one has got a story and a moral usually too. And he was the most amazing man. I absolutely adored him. One time we were in San Francisco. I happened to join them in San Francisco and they were doing, what's the big open air stadium? Can't remember, with Bill Graham. Anyway, Dean was chasing me around the hotel that night. Dean, who I did end up getting engaged to. And I wanted to get away from him. So I ran to Ronnie's room. Ronnie let me in. So I spent the night with Ronnie, stayed in his bed with him. And the next morning, he tried to make love to me. And I just said, no, I don't want to ruin our friendship, because we were so close. And I really didn't want to ruin the friendship. So I refused, which I'm really glad I did. I never really wanted to be messing around with the guys in the bands because, as I actually used to say, I would rather be the one who didn't than one of the millions who did, or one of the thousands who did. It was too easy to go to bed with these guys. It was just too easy, and I really didn't want to fall into that trap, as I knew many women on the road did.
You were keeping it professional.
Yeah, I was trying to anyway, but of course with Skynyrd.
They were gorgeous.
Yeah, but we were just really close friends. Now, with the others in the band, I mean, if I hadn't been working for them, I probably would have given in to Ronnie, because he was so charismatic, such a charmer, so clever with words. The others, they were like little boys to me, really. And even Dean, who for years was chasing me, Dean was their stage manager, who was chasing me, I held him at arm's length. I didn't want to mess around in this thing, sleeping with the road crew. Although I wasn't really innocent when it came to that. But with the band, no. Well, I mean, Gary, sweetheart, but he was like a little puppy. I mean, he really was, with his long hair. He was like a spaniel. And he was like a little, just a sweet young guy. And I just looked on them as kids. Same with Alan Collins. Again, like a spaniel with all that lovely long hair and all these gangly legs and tall and skinny. But Alan had an edge to him, always did, even before the plane crash. Slightly edgy in that he could turn. Gary was always sweet. Alan could turn. So one had to be kind of wary. Now Leon, the bass player, oh, what a funny man. What a sweetheart. He was hilarious. He always had me in stitches because he was so funny. And we just became really good friends. Same with Billy. I didn't know Billy that well, the piano player, but I did admire his piano playing. He was classically trained. And of course, with my love being classical music, when they were on stage, I would stand by the piano just watching Billy's hands. He was a genius on the piano. He could play anything. He could play blues, jazz, rock, classical, anything. And the original drummer we had was Bob Burns. And he, again, this is all in my book, but when they first came over to London, I'd put them into a really nice hotel, the Portobello Hotel, which is fabulous. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't know what they were going to be like. Anyway, the first night, about 4:00 in the morning, I get a phone call from the manager of the hotel saying, "You've got to come here immediately. Otherwise, we're calling the police." And this was the beginning of my relationship with Skynyrd. Always the police were involved. Anyway, Bob had strangled the hotel cat, thrown it out of the window, and run away into Hyde Park, which of course is locked at night. So I couldn't drive into it to hunt for him. Anyway, I went to the hotel, picked up Ronnie Van Zant, and we drove around London for hours trying to find Bob.
What an introduction.
So he was the drummer then. He then did leave the band. I think he ended up in some kind of a, I don't know, mental asylum or something. I never really knew, so I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. And they got Artemis Pyle. Now, Artemis is the only one still alive as we speak today in January 2024. And he was very enigmatic, very sort of mysterious. But I think he put that on. I think he tried to be. And he'd always... Anyway, he then made an effort to seduce me and succeeded.
He was gorgeous.
He was gorgeous.
Oh.
Really gorgeous. But he'd look at me under hooded eyes and he'd gaze and gaze and gaze at me all through, probably that must have been the second or third tour.
Wow.
And I gave in. I couldn't help it. And I sort of ended up with a bit of a crush on him.
I don't blame you.
Well, no, quite. Thank you, Daisy. And he, I've got some pictures here of them, but none of Artemis, funnily enough. And he...
They're so special.
But he was married. I mean, it couldn't go anywhere. He was married, he had kids. And then when I went over to Jacksonville to go and stay with them and visit all of them in their homes, I met all the wives. So, and again, it was when we were in San Francisco that Dean was stage manager. He'd been with Skynyrd from day one, from before day one. He'd known Gary, Alan and Ronnie when they were all still in school. Dean's family had moved down from Connecticut. He was a northerner. The others were southerners. Because his father was building swimming pools for Esther Williams's company, famous swimming star. You probably, again, too young to remember her. And so they ended up in Jacksonville and Dean became very friendly with the guys. And like me, loved their music. And they became like brothers, literally like brothers. So Dean was part of them from day one. And so he'd come on the road with them. He didn't come on the first tour to Europe, but he did come on the second one. And he started making a play for me. Well, I wasn't interested. I really wasn't. Because he was far too gorgeous for me. I mean, and then I discovered he had film stars and models as girlfriends.
But you were absolutely
so what was
stunning.
Well, thank you. But what was he after me for? So he was after me for about 4 years. On a wall in his apartment, he had all these photographs of his girlfriends. All these, literally.
Checklist.
And me in the middle. Oh, I couldn't believe it. But I still wasn't interested. It took me a long time. It took me about, 3 years. Because I first met him in 74, end of 74, and they came over for their second tour. And I didn't give in to him until 1977.
Bless you.
I know.
An interesting story about this picture.
Right, well this one is we just got engaged. This is September 1977, just before the plane crash. This was the time of Gary Rossington's wedding to his first wife, Martha. And I'd gone over for the wedding and staying with Dean. And for the second, I'd stayed with Dean before, but I wouldn't let him touch me. This time, because you see, all the band had told me by this time, and all the girl singers, and the crew, who'd all known Dean forever, they all said to me, he really does love you. It's really you that he wants. And also I knew his parents. I'd met them by this time. And apparently, the day he first met me, he'd phoned his parents and said, I've met the girl I'm going to marry.
Oh,
I know.
it's so cute.
And he fought for me all those years. I was holding him at arm's length. Anyway, I gave in to him and we went to sort of celebrate our engagement. We went to Disney World Is it Disneyland or Disney World? The one in Florida.
I think it's World.
Disney World. Another Ronnie came with us, a friend of Dean's, and one of the girl singers, Leslie, darling, sweet Leslie. We went. Ronnie Van Zant had said to us, right, I want you to stay in the best place because you're celebrating your engagement. Of course, he would have been the best man. And so he paid for us to stay in this amazing flash Winnebago. I mean, all we had in England were poxy little caravans, pokey little things. I'd never seen anything like this silver, huge monster. It was fabulous, so luxurious. I think it had 3 double bedrooms or something.
Everything's bigger in America.
Yeah. And also on the drive there, is that the bit you want me to tell you?
If you want to.
I don't mind. On the drive there, Dean suddenly stopped the car, jumped out into a field, came running back with a handful of magic mushrooms. How he knew they were there, I don't know.
I think it's his sixth sense, for sure.
Yeah. So we had a good time, as you can imagine.
And you wanted to share a little bit about Ronnie.
Yeah, there was just a couple of bits I'd made a note of here about Ronnie. I sort of say that he was, I think he was underrated, but he was a massive talent, a brilliant wordsmith. And he was highly intelligent, frighteningly so, despite not having a brilliant education. I mean, his parents, I knew them as well. His father had come on the road with us, Lacey Van Zandt. Nice man, salt of the earth, but none of them were well educated.
Yeah.
And his mother was always called Sister. It's a southern thing. I think Elvis's family mother was, or grandmother was called Sister. It seems to be a southern thing. Anyway, they were just lovely, but there wasn't a brilliant education down there in the deep south. But Ronnie just had this amazing intelligence. And also the notes I've made really was that he was a real street fighting southerner and proud of it. Rather a dichotomy though, because he was the hard man versus the soft man. Even when drunk or stoned, he stayed in control. I mean, he'd have fights, but they were controlled fights. I mean, he knew what he was doing. And the weird thing about this band, pretty much after every concert, they'd end up in a fight in the dressing room. I mean, literally, a fisticuffs fight.
What, all of them?
Yes, because Ronnie or one of them had thought something went wrong or there was a wrong note or something. Nobody in the audience would have noticed. It's just some
like
tiny
brothers.
little thing. Yes, like brothers. But real fisticuffs, real fights. Oh my God, the dramas. And then there was another time, I think it was the Hammersmith Odeon. It's not called that any longer, in London. It was the end of they'd probably done 2 or 3 nights there. And no, it was the beginning. And the backdrop was the Southern flag. And the flag touched the floor. And Ronnie went absolutely apeshit. He said, that flag's got to be destroyed because it means we've lost the war. But they did lose. I mean, they lost the war. But we still had to destroy that flag and get another one made.
Oh, wow.
I mean, imagine trying to find in London somebody to make a huge, massive backdrop for the Hammersmith Odeon of the Southern flag. I don't know how we did it, but we did it. We did it. But I mean, such weird things went on like that.
It's so special, like proper family memories.
Yeah. And their favourite drink was what they called jet fuel, which was Jack Daniels with Coke. And then once they became more famous and more money, they would drink, it was a particular champagne. I've forgotten which one. But they would put ice in it. It was a really good champagne. Wow. Really good, expensive champagne, Bollinger or something, with ice in it, which is just a bit bonkers.
So one question I have for you, what is your favourite Lynyrd Skynyrd song?
Freebird, without a doubt.
Yeah?
Without a doubt. I have to say, though, after the plane crash, it took me many years to be able to listen to it. If I leave here tomorrow, will you still remember me? I mean, really, yeah.
Yeah, it's true what you say about the lyrics. You really have to listen, then you realise just how deep they are.
Yeah, exactly. And Freebird is just... I must just tell you something. Just recently, in November, there was this top 20 guitar riffs. And it starts with Guns N' Roses and goes on with Dire Straits. And number 10 is Lynyrd Skynyrd, Sweet Home Alabama, above the Rolling Stones, above Led Zeppelin, above Jimi Hendrix. Yes!
Above the Who?
Well, the Who aren't on here at all.
No. There we go.
No. So I just thought that was such a lovely little thing.
Such a good track, though.
Yeah. Sweet
So
Home
good.
Alabama. But again, and the one I love the story of is Gimme 3 Steps. I mean, that's a story from Ronnie's life.
Really?
I mean, he went into a bar, got chatting to a girl, not realising she was with somebody else. And the guy, the boyfriend of the girl, came up to him and started getting angry. And Ronnie just said, okay, give me 3 steps to the door. And that's what it's about. Give me 3 steps so I can get to the door.
I'll always wonder what songs he wrote whilst wearing the hat that you're wearing now, though. I guess we'll never know.
Yes, we'll never know. Actually, a little interjection here, because I don't know where else I can say it, but it's reminded me. My brother also was given, wait for this, a Fender guitar by Tom Petty.
Oh, good grief.
Tom Petty's band was in my flat one day. This is in Fulham in London. It must have been the middle 70s. I don't remember. And because I knew their manager very well. He lives in Los Angeles now. And obviously they were in my flat because they were waiting to go to Heathrow. And my flat was Fulham, and which is close to Heathrow. And we were waiting for the taxis to arrive to take them to Heathrow. Well, when the cabs arrived, there wasn't room to fit in this last guitar. And Tom Petty just said to my brother, "Oh, you have it."
Lucky brother.
I know, he's the one that got all these amazing things. I didn't get anything. Well, I had the memories. I had the real life.
I'd have the memories any day.
Right, just back to my notes on Ronnie. I also put here, see, this was a puzzle to me. They were sort of rednecks, the Southern boys, because they, again, lack of education, didn't really like blacks, they didn't like gays, they weren't that supportive of women. But Ronnie wasn't like that. Ronnie had a different sensibility. He respected women that he admired, he really did, and I know he respected me massively because he asked me to manage them.
Yeah.
That September when I was in Jacksonville, the contract was up in November of 77 with their manager, and that's when he asked me to take over the management.
That's when everything was going great with the engagement.
Yeah. I just got engaged to Dean, and I was going to move over there. And Dean and I, we decided to live. We didn't want to stay in Jacksonville because really we wanted to get away from the temptations of all the drugs, I suppose, really. And we didn't want to go to New York because it was just, but I needed to be somewhere where there was a good orchestra. And Atlanta at that time, and I wanted to sing as well in a good choir. So we decided on Atlanta. So that's where we were going to move to. And that's when I came back to England, really to pack up everything and move over there to go and find a new apartment or something in Atlanta. And of course that never happened because then the plane crash came. I think I've talked about all the boys, haven't I?
Shall we move over to the
Well,
Rollins?
I just do want to say that the girls, the singers,
for sure.
they were fantastic. Ronnie called them the Honkettes, which is quite a clever name. But it's a bit harsh, I think.
A little bit, but...
Because they didn't honk. They had beautiful voices.
I guess it's a sense of humour.
Yeah. I had to think of something. Leslie, who is the only one, if she is still alive, God, I don't even know. She was the most petite, sort of pretty one, and I know she'd had a fling with Gary on the road. And they all could sing so beautifully in tune. I'm sure they all had perfect pitch, because I never heard one of them out of tune. And each gig they would ask me to go right out the front and listen to them and report back. And I always did. And I always say to them, you were fine. You were brilliant. There was never anything that I heard that was wrong. Anyway, one time after the crash, she'd survived, but she was very badly hurt. And there was no insurance set up.
Oh, gosh.
There was only the insurance for the band, none for the crew, none for the girl singers. This is where the manager was very remiss. And she took me to a rodeo. I went to a rodeo.
No way.
And her friend was the rodeo star of the year. But of course it never lasts long with rodeo stars because they're hurt so badly, so often and so young. They're only a star for probably a couple of years.
Oh, sheesh.
Oh, he was the champion rodeo something or other of Texas. I don't know. I can't remember.
That's incredible.
Now, Cassie was in the plane crash. Cassie was the sister of Steve Gaines. Steve Gaines was the new guitarist. He'd only just joined them. I'd met him. He'd been over here for a tour. And what a sweet, lovely, soft, gentle guy. Really lovely. And when the band were looking for another guitarist, Cassie had recommended him to Ronnie. And I think at first Ronnie just thought, oh, just another guitarist. But no, he fitted in so well. He became one of them. He became another brother. And he wrote That Smell, which is, if you listen to the words of that smell, it's that smell, the smell of death surrounds me, which a lot of fans have sort of thought was presentiment of the crash or death or something. And also, see, on the cover of that album, Street Survivors it was called, there's Steve in the middle and there's flames behind him.
Oh, sheesh.
So it's kind of...
like a premonition.
Yeah, that's the word I'm thinking of. Thank you. Anyway, on the plane, and I've been told this by the survivors, Cassie was sitting next to one of the roadies, Kenny. Kenny told me this. And it's in my book, and he gave me permission to tell the story. They'd been sitting together. Now, the sun was setting. Cassie wanted to move to go and look at the sunset. So Kenny let her out, and she went, and then she came back and sat in a different seat. I can't remember if she was next to the window or in the aisle seat, but she moved. She was killed and he survived. So he said for years he had sort of survivor's guilt, but then realised there was no point in being like that because he couldn't help it. And there are a few films on YouTube, and there's one film that I've commented on actually in the comments on YouTube that I'm kind of annoyed about. It was the rescuers were amazing, but one of them says on this film that the band were at the front of the plane, and obviously that's because they were the stars and all the crew were at the back. That's not true. They all were friends together. There was no division between band and crew. They were all friends. They all loved each other as much as each other. You know, didn't matter if somebody was in the crew. I mean, in fact, there's Kenny, one of the crew, sitting with Cassie, one of the singers. And Dean was at the front, sitting with with Ronnie. Ronnie was the band, Dean was crew. So, it's kind of annoying that somebody who didn't even know them would make that assumption that there was this division between the stars and the crew. There wasn't.
No, it was all one big family.
Yeah. Ronnie was an egalitarian through and through. Everybody was equal to him. So that's one of the things I wanted to correct that's out there. So then the other one, Jojo Billingsley, the other girl singer, she had an affair with Alan, and they were both two mad people together. It was just kind of silly and nonsensical. They'd just get drunk and be silly and cause me trouble, always caused me trouble. But not as much trouble as Leon caused me one night. We were in Bristol. I think we were in a Holiday Inn, because we were banned from Holiday Inns after this. And the letter to me from Holiday Inn banning them is somewhere on in the ether. It was advertised for sale somewhere not long ago. I was asleep in my room, like a good tour manager. Bang, bang, bang on the door, as often happened. It was the hotel manager. You've got to come out or we'll call the police. I think maybe the police were there. I can't remember. And he said, somebody, what was it he'd done? I can't remember. I probably need to reread it in the book. He'd thrown something out of the hotel window, I think. A TV or something. And he said, we've got to get the person out of this room. And it was Leon's room. So we went in there, nobody in there. He wasn't there. So we've got to find him. So now I knew what he'd done. Oh, no. But I also knew where he was hiding. So I cleverly said, right, well, we'll go into all the rooms and you can see nobody there, nobody there. He's not there, he's not there. And then they said, well, what about this room? Next to his. I said, oh, no, you can't go in there. That's the truck driver. We mustn't disturb him. He's got to have his proper sleep. Mm. Now, Leon had climbed out of his window along the ledge, and we were quite high up, into the window of Roy, the truck driver, next door. Of course, once they'd all gone, the hotel management and the police, I went, got him out.
Oh, good grief.
Gave him a rollicking.
The stress you must have been under.
Oh, another story has come to mind. I think we were in Stafford this time, and we'd all gone to see the film Carrie. You know, where with Sissy Spacek, mm-hmm. where the poltergeist activity all happens around her. And there's shots of Carrie sort of covered in blood with a sort of white, cream-coloured silk nightgown thing on and sort of walking around like a zombie. So everybody had gone to bed and Dean was with me in my room and he said, and I happened to have as a nightgown, a white sort of satiny nightgown. And he said, why don't you put that on? Put some makeup all over your face. And we'll go and frighten Leon. Because Leon had been very freaked out by the film. Absolutely. So we did. I managed to get the hotel to open Leon's door to his bedroom. Leon was asleep. And I don't know what we did. Dean, I think, must have gone and gently woken him up. And Leon sat up and he suddenly saw me in front of him. Oh, no. And he thought it was Carrie. And he went completely apeshit. He was absolutely terrified. Really, seriously.
Oh, shame.
And I felt awful afterwards.
Serves him right for the last thing, though.
This was Dean's idea of fun. And it was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
Oh, bless him. Oh.
I mean, some of my other notes was Cassie, Jojo, she was, I've just put here, she was actually completely fucking bonkers. Excuse my French. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. But she was a sweet girl at heart and sadly died far too young. I'm not sure why. I mean, she survived the crash. No, she wasn't even on the plane. Ronnie had sacked her for being out of control, causing too much trouble. And there were some films of her on YouTube sort of speaking rather incoherently. And then I heard she died, and it was probably just, I don't know, bad lifestyle. I really don't know. But Leslie Hawkins, if you watch this, contact me through the YouTube comments. I'd love to speak to you, see you, speak to you. Be in touch by email or something. Kenny Beaton contacted me, and then he died not long ago. So sad.
That was sad.
Yeah. Anyway, I just put some last notes here that they all always treated me with respect and would always obey me. And they weren't stupid, and they knew that I was there to look after them, even when I bossed them around. You know, get up, get to bed, pack your bags, do this, do that. They knew, even though they might complain, they knew that I was doing it for them. Mm. And yeah, they did. They always respected me, all of them. What was it Leon said to me? Don't give me the evil eye. He said, don't give me the evil eye. You terrify me.
There's a reason why Lynyrd Skynyrd as a band has such an amazing, vast fan base, even now. And it's like you say, it's these amazing stories. They were just real people, you know?
And also the music is eternal, I think. It will never date. It's just really good music, and they're really good musicians, you know, and it's the music touches the heart as well. I'm not touching the microphone. So that's really, those are my stories. So other than that's in the book, and also lots of more photographs on my website, because I couldn't fit that many in the book.
Did you want to share anything about your time with the Rolling Stones before we wrap up?
It's mostly in the book, especially with my time living with Mick and Bianca as their first nanny for Jade. Really, all the stories are in there. I mean, Mick was fine. He's just a really nice guy. And when I had to testify in their divorce, I testified on his behalf. And because to me, he was the better parent. But I think it was in the days when the mother always got the child, so Bianca got her. But they shared her. I mean, they really did. And, you know, they're all... I still hear news of them from Mick's assistant. You know, I'm always told what's going on with Jade, my baby, who's now a grandmother, making Mick a great-grandfather. I mean, and Bianca. I can't believe Bianca's a great-grandmother.
Sheesh.
But Charlie was always really nice. And on the road... on date nights off, when there was no concert, I would go to a classical concert either at the Berlin Philharmonic or the Paris Opera House or one of those. And sometimes Charlie would come with me. So we'd just sneak off and have some nice downtime with classical music. Bill is a sweetheart, really, really nice guy. And I go and stay with him and his wife quite a lot, Astrid, his first wife, in their house in the south of France. Oh, they were the best hosts. I had the most wonderful times with them. And Woody is just a really sweet guy. I got some lovely photographs when I took him to the Paris flea market. And we went around and he bought me a lovely bottle of an old, ancient cut glass perfume bottle.
Oh, lovely.
Deep blue. And it's gorgeous. I still treasure it. Yeah, that's the Stones, really nice. I mean, on the tour I did, we had Billy Preston on keyboards. Now, he was tricky. He was very difficult because he had different boyfriends coming out all the time. I mean, Billy, American, and he'd have a boyfriend there, fine. But then, oh dear, they'd have a fight, so this boyfriend would have to go, and I'd have to organise for another boyfriend to come over, and it went on over and over and over again, different boyfriends sort of every week, it seemed.
Gosh.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Billy was okay. He didn't cause me any trouble, really.
Yeah.
None of them did. I mean, I thought I'd got trouble with The Who and Keith Moon. Stones didn't cause any trouble at all. Skynyrd were a whole different thing.
Yeah.
It was just always trouble. I was always firefighting with Skynyrd.
Whole nother kettle of fish.
Yeah, the whole time.
So before we wrap up the interview, Sally, you did mention that you wanted to share some errors and make some
in
corrections
the book.
from your book.
Thank you, yes, I do. Oh, I'm so sorry, people. And again, this was the amazing Jeff who pointed out my mistakes to me. And my reply to him was, I wish you'd been my proofreader. I did have 4 proofreaders. A lot of things were corrected, but these are the 4 things that weren't. So on page 150, where I've put Corinna Gaines, this is after the plane crash of Skynyrd, it should have been Teresa. Teresa was Steve's wife. Corinna was his daughter. So I've transposed those names by mistake, and I'm so sorry. On page 162, talking about the first Mike Oldfield tour, when I was his tour manager, I had to get a bell made for him for tubular bells, a great big bell, at the Whitechapel Bell Foundry in East London. And I had to go and pick it up. And in fact, my brother reminded me I didn't pick it up. He picked it up, in my mini car. And I've written in the book, which is ridiculous when you think about it, that it was 8.5 tons. It wasn't. It was 8.5 stone. car wasn't even a ton, probably.
Just
I mean, 8
squished the
tons
mini.
is the size of a great big bull, isn't it? Anyway, so that was a silly mistake. On page 185, when it was talking about a charity concert I'd done with one of the Police, Andi Summers, had taken part. I put him down as the bass player. Sorry, idiot. I'm not a fan of the Police. I had made an assumption and I shouldn't have done. And then a very small one, but this is to do with my sister-in-law. On page 271, there's a photograph of me with my tattoo on my mastectomy scar. And it's been attributed to Laura Yabsley, and it should be Lorna Yabsley. Lorna Yabsley, my sister-in-law, is the most amazing photographer. And I feel so guilty that wasn't corrected. So those were my errors.
It's good to have them out there.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, Sally, thank you so much for spending some time with me again. And if any of you haven't seen our first interview that we did last year, I will link that in the description below and in my end cards on this video. But thank you so much to everyone. Thank you to Jimmy, my amazing cameraman.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you to Sally for being here.
Daisy.
Thank you guys for watching.